The Galactic Council was a vast assembly of the galaxy's most powerful species. It's a place where decisions about the fate of entire worlds were made. For years, Earth had tried to prove itself among the stars. It was a young, wild planet in the eyes of the galactic powers. While Earth had its share of remarkable achievements, many alien races saw humanity as too unpredictable, too violent, and too primitive to fit into their peaceful community. Still, Earth's leaders worked hard to earn their place. But on this day, the decision was made. The council met in a grand hall, space that stretched across light years, where representatives from different worlds gathered to discuss Earth's future. The decision to exile Earth from the galactic community was to be voted on, and the tension was thick.
Ouch.
Earth's ambassador, Captain David Lewis, stood at the front, listening intently to the voices of the alien races. Some spoke with anger, others with pity, and a few with calm certainty. The decision was already made in their eyes. The words exile rang through the hall like thunder. The council spoke of Earth's refusal to follow galactic laws and its history of violent conflicts. They talked about Earth's wars and the way its people had acted without regard for galactic peace. Earth is a threat to the harmony of the galaxy, they declared. David's heart sank. He had worked tirelessly to build bridges with the galaxy's species to prove that humans could change. All those years of work seemed to mean nothing. Earth's bright future was now in the hands of these alien leaders who saw only danger. In humanity's unpredictability, the vote was swift and the decision was unanimous. Earth was exiled, its membership in the Galactic Council revoked. The doors to the stars would be shut. David stood silently, his mind racing. He had seen the potential in humanity. They were capable of great things. But the rest of the galaxy had judged them too harshly. For the first time in his life, David wondered if Earth could ever find a way back from this. What did the future hold now? As David left the council chamber, he could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him. The news would soon reach Earth, and he had to prepare for the fallout. He knew it would not be easy, but he had always believed in humanity's strength. Even though Earth had been cast aside, David refused to believe that their story was over. There had to be a way for humanity to prove itself. He wasn't ready to let go of that hope. Back on Earth, the news spread like wildfire. The governments, the military, and the people all reacted in their own ways. Some were devastated, some were angry, and some were frightened. But there were a few who saw this as an opportunity. Humanity had always been an outsider in the galaxy, and now it had been cast aside completely. But instead of retreating into the shadows, there were those who felt it was time to fight back. Captain David Lewis, now more determined than ever, called an emergency meeting with Earth's leaders. They gathered in a secure room deep within Earth's capital. The room was filled with military officers, scientists, and strategists. David stood at the head of the table, his hands gripping the edge of it tightly. "We've been exiled, but this isn't the end. It's just the beginning," David said, his voice steady but filled with fire. "We've been told that we don't belong in the galaxy, that we're too dangerous, too unpredictable. But we know better. Humanity has the power to rise above this. We just need to remember who we are." He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of everyone present. "We have the strength, the brains, and the heart to show the galaxy that Earth is not to be underestimated. But it's going to take all of us. We need to prepare." The room was quiet for a moment as the weight of his words sank in. Then, one by one, the officers and leaders began to nod. They understood what had to be done. "We'll start immediately," one of the generals said. "We'll need every resource at our disposal. We're going to rebuild our fleet, rework our technology, and prepare to defend ourselves." Smiled, though it was a small one. "And we'll do it our way." The meeting ended and plans were set into motion. Earth's brightest minds, its strongest leaders, and its bravest soldiers all worked together, knowing that the fate of their planet was at stake. But this wasn't just about survival. It was about showing the galaxy that humanity would never be bowed, never be broken. The exiling of Earth might have been the galaxy's greatest mistake, and soon they would see why. After the decision to exile Earth from the Galactic Council, the atmosphere on the planet was filled with a mix of anger and disbelief. Captain David Lewis had returned from the council meeting and faced the reality of what had just happened. The news spread quickly across Earth, and the people of the planet were shocked by the decision to shut them out. They had always known that humans were seen as outsiders, but they had never expected to be completely rejected. The governments of Earth met to discuss their response. President Elizabeth Harper stood at the front of the room, her face serious. Around her were the leaders of Earth's most powerful nations, each one filled with a sense of urgency. "What do we do now?" one of the ministers asked, his voice trembling. "The council has exiled us. They say we're a threat to peace. What if they decide to act against us?" President Harper glanced around at the group. They had faced many challenges before wars, disasters and political tensions, but this was different. The fate of the entire planet hung in the balance. "We don't wait for them to act. We act ourselves," she said firmly. "Humanity has been given a challenge, and we're going to meet it head-on. We won't hide. We won't back down. We'll show the galaxy what Earth is truly capable of." David Lewis stood in the back of the room, listening intently. He knew that the words President Harper spoke were true. He had seen humanity's strength in countless ways, and this was just another test. It wasn't just about survival, it was about showing the galaxy that Earth was more than a primitive planet. The next steps were clear. Earth would no longer try to follow the rules set by the Galactic Council. Instead, they would create their own path, one that the galaxy would have to acknowledge. Within days, Earth's brightest minds were brought together to form a new initiative. A secret project was launched, one that would bring Earth's space fleet into the modern age. The project was called Operation Phoenix, named after the legendary bird that rose from the ashes. Earth's engineers, scientists, and military leaders began working day and night to make the impossible happen. They had the technology, the knowledge, and the will to succeed. But the challenge wasn't just about upgrading their weapons and ships. It was about creating something that would catch the attention of the entire galaxy. David was put in charge of overseeing the project. With the support of the world's most skilled engineers and military experts, he began to lead the effort to build Earth's most powerful warship. Would be a symbol of humanity's determination. The ship would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, combining the best of human ingenuity and a few unexpected twists. Meanwhile, the military began preparing. While the scientists worked on the new ship, the military forces were tasked with ensuring Earth's safety. They had to train soldiers, pilot new ships, and organize defenses. The message was clear. Earth would no longer be a passive player. If the galaxy wanted to exile them, they would have to face the consequences. Months passed, and the progress on Operation Phoenix was staggering. The ship, which was still under construction, began to take shape. It was larger, stronger, and more advanced than anything humanity had built before. It incorporated some of the alien technology that humans had secretly acquired over the years, combined with Earth's own engineering expertise. But what made the ship truly dangerous was its unpredictability. No one could predict what humanity would do next, and that was what made them so powerful. One night, as David stood on the bridge of the nearly finished ship, he looked out over the ocean of stars. The Phoenix was almost ready. He could feel the weight of what was at stake. The ship wasn't just a weapon, it was humanity's statement to the galaxy. Statement that they would never bow to anyone, no matter how powerful. "We're ready," David said to the chief engineer, standing beside him. "Let's show them what humanity can do." As the final components were added to the ship, the people of Earth grew more united. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting to prove that they deserved their place in the galaxy. The project, which had begun in secret, was now a symbol of hope. Earth would no longer be seen as weak. It would no longer be ignored. The day finally arrived. Phoenix was ready for launch. The entire planet watched as the massive warship, the symbol of humanity's resolve, lifted off from Earth's surface and soared into the stars. It was a moment of triumph. Earth had burned the rulebook, and now they were writing their own. Future David stood in front of the massive ship, watching as it disappeared into the night sky. The first chapter of humanity's new story was about to begin, and this time the galaxy would know they had made a terrible mistake. The Council had underestimated humanity, and Earth was about to prove them all wrong. The Phoenix shot through space, its powerful engines leaving Earth far behind. For the first time in history, a human-made warship was heading directly toward the heart of galactic space, a place where humanity had never been welcomed. The message was clear. Earth had been exiled, but humanity wasn't going to be ignored any longer. They were going to make their mark on the galaxy, and no one could stop them. Captain David Lewis stood at the control center of the Phoenix, watching as the stars stretched out before him. The crew worked with precision, moving quickly and efficiently. It was a new kind of mission, one that wasn't about diplomacy or fitting into galactic norms. This mission was about power, about showing the galaxy that Earth wasn't weak. This time, they had the strength to defend themselves. "Captain," a voice came through the comm system. "We've reached the outer rim of galactic space. We'll be within range of the Council's territory in less than 24 hours. David's face tightened. He had known this moment was coming, but now that it was here, the weight of it was heavier than he had imagined. The Phoenix was humanity's last word, a declaration that they would not be pushed aside any longer. This wasn't just a ship. It was a symbol of defiance, of survival, of the belief that humanity could stand equal to any galactic power. "Understood," David replied. "We'll send them our message before we enter their space." As the ship approached the edge of the Galactic Council's domain, the crew began to prepare for the next phase. A message was sent through the galactic communication channels, broadcasted to every corner of the galaxy. Earth wasn't asking for permission. Earth wasn't asking for peace. They were sending a challenge. The message was simple, direct, and clear. Earth is not your enemy, but we will not be exiled. If you wish to test us, you will see what humanity is capable of. We are coming for what is ours. David watched as the transmission went out. The reaction from the galactic community was immediate. Ships in the Galactic Council's space began to move, and reports of the message spread like wildfire. Some alien races were shocked, others frightened, and a few were even intrigued. But all of them knew one thing: humanity was no longer asking for permission. They were demanding respect. Back on Earth, the world watched as the Phoenix entered the unknown. The news spread rapidly, and the people of Earth felt something they hadn't felt in a long time: hope. For too long, humanity had been pushed aside. Now they had something to prove, and they were ready to show the galaxy that they were not just survivors, but a force to be reckoned with. But not everyone agreed with this path. On Earth, some leaders worried about the consequences. The Galactic Council had power beyond anything Earth had ever seen. It was one thing to stand up for themselves, but it was another to challenge a group that could easily wipe them out. Some of the people feared what would happen if the Council decided to retaliate. President Elizabeth Harper sat in her office, watching the Phoenix make its journey across space. She knew this was a dangerous game, but she also knew that humanity couldn't go back. Earth's place in the galaxy had been decided, and now humanity had to prove that they belonged. She believed in the people of Earth. They had shown time and time again that they could rise to any challenge. And this was no different. In the control room aboard the Phoenix, Captain David Lewis prepared for what was coming next. He had spoken to his crew about the importance of this mission, but now, as the ship neared the Galactic Council's borders, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something bigger than they could imagine. It wasn't just about a ship or a message anymore. It was about the future of Earth, the future of humanity. The countdown had begun. The Phoenix was almost at the Council's space, and David knew that this was their moment. Earth had been exiled, but now humanity was going to burn the Rulebook. No longer would they follow the orders of others. No longer would they sit quietly while the galaxy decided their fate, as the Phoenix moved closer to the center of galactic space. David's thoughts were interrupted by the comm system. "Captain, we've detected a large fleet moving toward us," the crew member reported. "They're closing in fast." David's heart raced. The Galactic Council had responded sooner than he expected. The confrontation was imminent. The Phoenix wasn't ready for a full-scale battle, but they didn't have a choice. This wasn't just about defense anymore. It was about making a statement. "Prepare for battle," David ordered. "And remind them, Earth does not back down." The crew scrambled into action. Weapons were armed, shields raised, and the Phoenix took its position. Outside, the stars were silent, as though they too were waiting for the battle to begin. David stood at the front of the control room, his hands gripping the console. The fate of humanity rested on what happened next. He had no idea what the outcome would be, but he knew one thing for sure: this was only the beginning. The galaxy would soon understand that Earth wasn't the weak, exiled planet they thought it was. Humanity had burned the rulebook, and now they were ready to fight. For their place in the stars, the Phoenix stood at the edge of the Galactic Council's territory, surrounded by a vast expanse of stars and the unknown. On board, the crew was tense. The large fleet approaching them wasn't just another group of ships. It was a warning. Clear message from the Galactic Council. Earth was not welcome. Captain David Lewis stood at the center of the command deck, staring at the screens that showed the incoming alien fleet. The message was unmistakable. The Council wasn't simply going to let Earth break free without a fight. The ships were large, sleek, and menacing. There were hundreds of them, all with weapons fully charged. But in that moment, David was not afraid. His mind was focused on one goal: to show the galaxy that humanity could not be crushed. "No matter how many ships the Council sent, we need to stay calm," David said to his crew, his voice steady. "Despite the chaos around them, we've trained for this. We're not just defending Earth, we're defending our right to exist as equals." His crew nodded, knowing what was at stake. Earth had been an outsider for far too long. This was their chance to show that they were not to be dismissed. They would stand their ground, no matter the odds. "Captain Lieutenant Sarah Weaver," the ship's weapons officer said, "the fleet is getting closer. Our sensors are picking up heavy firepower from their ships. They're prepared for a battle." David looked at the tactical screen. The alien ships were getting closer by the minute. His heart pounded in his chest, but his face remained calm. The Phoenix was their best chance at survival, but it was more than just a weapon. It was a statement, a message that would be heard across the galaxy. "Prepare all systems," David ordered. "We won't back down." Meanwhile, the news of Earth's bold stand had reached other parts of the galaxy. Some alien factions began to take notice of humanity's courage, seeing it as a challenge to the Council's authority. Among these factions was a race known as the Virith, a fierce warrior species who had long viewed the Galactic Council's decisions with suspicion. The Virith had no love for the Council. Many of them were secretly cheering for Earth's rebellion. "The humans are bold," said General Kor, a Virith warrior leader, watching the Phoenix on his own command screen. "They do not fear the Council. Perhaps they are worthy of respect after all." But not all alien races shared Kor's view. The Council was vast, and many other species sided with its decision. They saw Earth's defiance as a threat to galactic peace. One of these races, the Ceruleans, an ancient species known for their vast fleets, began organizing their own response. "To Earth's actions, we cannot allow this to go unchecked," said Admiral Valrax, the leader of the Cerulean fleet. "The humans are challenging our way of life. It must be stopped before their rebellion spreads." In a dark corner of the galaxy, the call to action had already begun to stir. Back aboard the Phoenix, the crew readied for what was to come. Earth's fleet had been built quickly, and though it wasn't as powerful as the fleets of the Galactic Council. Humans had something that no one else did: the will to fight. They weren't just defending their planet, they were fighting for their right to belong in the galaxy. "Captain, the first wave is upon us," Sarah said, her fingers flying over the controls. "They're opening fire." The first blast from the alien ships came quickly. The Phoenix rocked as energy beams slammed into its shields. The ship groaned, but its defenses held strong. David watched the readouts, his mind working faster than ever. "Return fire, target their lead ships," commanded. The Phoenix unleashed its own weapons. The ship's cannons fired with deadly accuracy, striking the lead ships of the enemy fleet. Explosions erupted across the alien ships, sending shockwaves through space. But the battle had only just begun. The Council's ships were powerful, and they returned fire with force. The sky was filled with the brilliant, deadly flashes of battle. "We can't stop them all," said Lieutenant Weaver, her face tense. "We need to create an opening." David knew she was right. They couldn't fight forever, but they could fight smart. "Focus all fire on their flagship," he ordered. "If we can disable their command ship, the rest of the fleet will lose." Coordination. The crew worked quickly, and the Phoenix locked onto the flagship, sending a barrage of energy blasts that struck its shields. The alien ships were closing in fast, but humanity's weapon, their boldness, gave them the edge. As the Phoenix attacked, David's mind was sharp. They were not just surviving, they were making a statement. Back on Earth, the battle raged. And across the galaxy, news broadcasts showed images of Earth's fleet in battle, fighting not only to defend their home, but to prove to the galaxy that they were not to be overlooked. Earth was showing the galaxy that they would no longer accept exile. They would fight for their place, no matter the cost. The battle was far from over. But Earth's message was already clear. The Phoenix and its crew were just the beginning. Humanity had burned the Rulebook, and now the galaxy would feel the heat. As the Phoenix continued its mission, David stood at the front of the control room, his gaze fixed on the stars. They had only begun to fight for Earth's place in the galaxy. Whatever came next, humanity would face it together.
They would
not be cowed. They would not be exiled. And the galaxy would soon understand the true power of Earth. The battle between Earth and the Galactic Council had reached a critical point. The Phoenix and its fleet had clashed with the Council's ships, and the galactic space around them had become a war zone. Explosions lit up the dark void as weapons, fired from both sides, each strike more intense than the last. Yet, despite the overwhelming force of the Council's fleet, humanity had shown something the galaxy wasn't prepared for. Relentless determination. Captain David Lewis stood on the command deck of the Phoenix, his eyes fixed on the vast expanse of space. The ship shook as another round of enemy fire struck the shields. The crew worked swiftly, adjusting their course and firing back at the advancing enemy ships. But David knew that this battle wasn't just about winning. It was about proving humanity's place in the galaxy. "We can't keep this up forever," Lieutenant Sarah Weaver said, her voice tense. "The Council's reinforcements are on the way. We need a plan to finish this." David nodded. He knew time was running out. Phoenix had taken damage and their resources were dwindling. The enemy fleet had already taken hits, but they were still a formidable force. The only way out of this situation was to take down the Council's flagship. It's the heart of their fleet. "We're going after their flagship," David declared, his voice calm but resolute. "We'll strike fast and hard. If we can disable their command ship, the rest of the fleet will lose their ability to coordinate." "Understood, Captain," Sarah replied. "We're locking onto their flagship now." As the Phoenix moved toward the flagship, the crew focused all their efforts on bringing down the enemy's most powerful vessel. The flagship was heavily shielded and armed, but David had a plan. They had already learned from their previous encounters with the Council's ships. They knew the weaknesses, the gaps in their defenses. Now it was time to use that knowledge to their advantage. "Prepare all weapons," David ordered. "Fire at their weak points. Target their engines and communication arrays. We need to cripple their ability to fight back." The Phoenix fired its weapons in quick succession. The first barrage struck the flagship's engines, sending sparks flying and causing a massive explosion. The flagship shook violently, but it didn't go down. The enemy fleet began to rally, trying to protect their command ship. "Keep the pressure on," David shouted. "We're not stopping until they surrender." The Phoenix fired again, this time hitting the flagship's communication systems. The explosion that followed sent shockwaves through the enemy fleet, disorienting them. The flagship's shields flickered, and David saw the opportunity. This was their chance. "All systems, full power to weapons," David ordered. "This is it. We end this now." The Phoenix unleashed its full power, sending a series of devastating blasts toward the flagship. The alien ship's shields finally broke under the pressure, and the hull began to crack. The Phoenix kept firing, hitting vital points, until Finally. The flagship's core exploded in a burst of light and energy. For a moment, everything was silent. The fleet of council ships stopped in their tracks, unsure of what to do next. The Phoenix hovered in space, waiting to see if their bold strike had worked. "We've done it," Sarah whispered, her eyes wide. "The flagship's down." David let out a slow breath, his eyes on the screen. The enemy fleet was still present, but without their flagship, they were disorganized. The Phoenix had struck at the heart of the Council's power, and now the remaining ships had lost their coordination. The battle was far from over, but the tide had turned. The Galactic Council's forces began to retreat, their ships scattering in all directions. The remaining alien fleets had no leader to guide them, and without their flagship, they couldn't maintain their offensive. Earth's fleet pressed on, finishing off the remaining ships one by one. "Captain, we've won," Sarah said, her voice filled with relief. "The enemy is retreating. We've broken their lines." David stood still for a moment, taking it all in. The battle was over. Earth had shown the galaxy that they would not be defeated. They had defied the Galactic Council, burned the Rulebook, and come out victorious. But as David looked out into the stars, he knew that this wasn't the end of humanity's journey. It was just the beginning. "We've sent a message to the galaxy," David said softly. "Earth is not weak. We will not be ignored. We'll never bow to anyone again." The crew of the Phoenix celebrated their victory, but the victory was more than just military. It was a symbolic moment for all of Earth. The galaxy had witnessed the power of humanity, and the message had been received loud and clear. Earth was no longer an outsider. It was a force to be reckoned with. The battle had proven that Earth could stand equal to any galactic power. The Council had underestimated humanity, and now they would never forget the lesson they had learned. As the Phoenix returned to Earth, the people of the planet looked up at the stars, filled with a newfound pride. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Earth had earned its place in the galaxy, and humanity would never again be pushed aside.